G'day, this is Jim from Living Life Now. Today I'm coming to you from the Crown Princess on the World Cruise, and we've just left New York and we're on our way to Miami. Our departure from New York was delayed to about midnight last night because of a hurricane sitting off the coast. We had some bumps overnight, but as you see, it's flattened out and turned into a beautiful day. In this video, I'm going to take you through how we spend our time in New York and some of the tips and tricks that we learned along the way that, if you're visiting in the future, may help you. So let's start at the beginning. The pilot arrived about 1:40 and guided us into port for an arrival about 4:30 a.m. Now, like every cruise ship visitor to New York, we were greeted by the Statue of Liberty, and I'm sure it's on many cruisers' wish list to pass this thing. The Statue of Liberty from the base to the torch is about the size of a 22-storey building. It was gifted by France in 1886 and designed by the same chap who did the Eiffel Tower. The torch symbols enlightenment and maybe one of the few enlightened souls in New York. But worldwide a symbol of hope and freedom, and definitely a sight to be seen. The bright lights of Manhattan are hard to miss as they approach in the distance. Manhattan just seemed to keep on going as we headed down the Hudson towards our berth at Pier 90. There was many that got up early like myself to experience the sail-in, and it was well worth the early morning. Now here's 30 seconds of sailing footage without me gibbering over the top. So once we pulled alongside, it was time to go back to bed for an hour. Before our arrival in New York, on the ship there was a little bit of fear going around on how long it will take to transfer through security and immigration. Lucky for us, we were down there having a coffee, and when the gangway opened just before 7 o'clock, there was no one waiting in line, so they just waved us through and said, away you go. So we quickly got through immigration and we were sitting in a diner by 8 o'clock in Broadway. All passengers were given an allocated immigration time, and we were lucky enough to have ours at 7:30. And I acknowledge that some people of the ship with later immigration times experienced long delays in getting ashore. I spoke to some people who didn't get ashore to 11:30. So let me take you through our first day. A taxi rank and taxis are available exactly opposite the terminal, but we decided to walk the 20 minutes, the 1.3 kilometres or just under a mile to Times Square. For getting an early start, we decided to go to Alan's Diner for breakfast. Now, Alan's Diner is the home of the singing waiters. And I walked in there and it was camp as a row of tents, and they were having a pretty good time singing away, and there was streamers going everywhere. And I was a little bit overloaded actually. I was just like, what's going on? I was probably silent for the first 5 minutes, which is unusual for me. The breakfasts came down, they were huge. After breakfast in Broadway, we just slipped next door to Times Square before the crowds arrived and got a couple of happy snaps there. Now, we're watching the weather pretty close, and we knew the rain was coming in, so we decided to hightail it up to the Rockefeller Center, top of the rock, while there was still some visibility there. On the way, we passed Radio City Music Hall and started to get a feel of the city and the noise and the beeping horns all the time. Now, we had pre-purchased tickets, skipped the line, which was a little bit of a waste of money, but it was cheap insurance. We didn't know how big those lines were going to be, but because we were early, there was no lines anyway, and we just transferred through the process, which had us going through security and then going into a theatre, seeing a little show, then escorted to the lifts, and then up to the lifts for Top of the Rock. The Top of the Rock is one of New York's most famous observation decks, perched on the 70th floor of the Rockefeller Plaza, right in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. Many prefer the Top of the Rock as it's a photographer's dream. You've got the Empire State Building to the south, you've got Central Park spread across the north, and although we weren't there on a clear day, we still had a fantastic view
We went early to try to beat the rain and maximise visibility, but on a clear day, sunset is the best time to visit. The design of the deck is meant to resemble the deck of an ocean liner, but I couldn't see it. Now we chose Top of the Rock as we wanted to get a view of the Empire State Building, and my research told me that it was the best spot to get an overall view. There's a novelty up there called The Beam, inspired by the famous 1932 photo Lunch Atop a Skyscraper. You sit on a steel beam replica and it rises about 12 feet in the air, and you can be photographed with Central Park and Midtown Manhattan behind you. I think it costs around about an extra $30 per person, and on a clear day I might have been tempted to take this option.
So we took our time up there and decided to have another coffee, because what a view. We had the Empire State Building on one side, and on the other side we have Central Park. Once we took the elevators down from the Top of the Rock, just outside the gift shop exit there was a shoe shine man shop. Never seen one of these in my life. We took our time and had a good look around the Rockefeller Center area.
The Rockefeller Center area is comprised of about 19 buildings complex, and it's famous for its Art Deco look as it was built in the 1930s in Midtown Manhattan. It includes the NBC studios and the Radio City Music Hall and the rink at the Rockefeller Center, which was a lot smaller than I thought it would be. The area is always buzzing and the morning TV crowds outside the Today Show, and it's an area that we associate with New York. Nearby was the New York Cathedral. When we popped in and had a quick look, and opposite the cathedral was the Atlas Monument, the famous half-man, half-god Hercules-looking kind of character with the world on his back.
Now, our next item on our agenda was to explore Lower Manhattan, which includes the 9/11 Memorial, Wall Street, the Bull, and Clinton Castle.
We got a taxi to Lower Manhattan, the 9/11 Memorial, from the Rockefeller Center, and it set us back about $35. The 9/11 Memorial and Museum is located on the former site of the World Trade Center. And as we all know, the Twin Towers were brought to ground in tragic circumstances on September the 11th, 2001. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to take in the underground museum that holds the artefacts of the twisted beams and the trucks and the personal items and tells the story. But we paid respect and quiet reflection to the 3,000 victims on what I thought was a very soothing memorial. It featured two vast reflecting pools on the exact footprint of the Twin Towers, and around each pool is the names of the 3,000 victims. It's quite a humbling place to be at. Also nearby is the One World Trade Center. We had friends that took the journey up there to the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. And by all accounts, the lift journey up and down was absolutely amazing and the views were incredible. From the 9/11 Memorial site, we took the short walk to Wall Street in the financial district, the heart of America's financial system, the New York Stock Exchange, located on Broad Street with its iconic neoclassical columns. Just a bit further on was the Charging Bull. The bronze statue symbolises financial optimism, but it's surrounded by tourists. Everyone wanted to either touch its balls or rub its head. And I was quite surprised that the people lining up to rub its balls were longer than those waiting to rub its head. But urban myth has it that it will bring you financial freedom. If you keep walking south, you come to Castle Clinton at Battery Park. It was a fort built in 1811 to defend New York Harbour against the British. Now I found it a little bit underwhelming, but again we didn't take time to do the tour through there. We just took in the surrounding area. We were hoping to get a view of the Statue of Liberty, but it was kind of gated off and there was lots of fences up that stopped you getting a clear, uninterrupted view. This is the place to get your tickets and to hop on the ferries to go to the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. But again, on a short timeline, we didn't get the ferry to Staten Island or Ellis Island to see the Statue of Liberty up close. And we'd seen everything we wanted to see in Lower Manhattan, so we decided to get the subway back to Midtown.
Now the subway was easy to use. You just tapped on, found your appropriate line, and we were after to go to Central Station, so it was just one train line in.
Riding the subway in New York is one of those experiences that you won't forget in a hurry. It's a very practical way to get around New York, as the network under the city covers just about all areas. We were there in summer and the station was quite hot, and apparently it's hot in summer and cold in winter. But it's as you'd expect. It's noisy, it's lively, and it's a real authentic experience with a really diverse clientele. Once off the train, we followed the signs along the concourse, moving through the tiled corridors, finally emerging into the grand main area of the station. The space opens dramatically with high ceilings, beams and light and tall windows, and has a constant energy of crossroads, where hundreds of people continually intersect. One's there getting their selfies and Instagram shots, as did we. We took a moment of pause in the middle of movement, just a chance to soak in the atmosphere of one of the busiest hubs in the city. We call this renting prime real estate, where we sat with our good friends Nick and Bev and enjoyed an overpriced drink and snack.
Our Central Station, what a place, mind-blowing. Anyway, by now we had covered 20,000 steps and the old legs were getting a little bit sore. We waved down a taxi and got a taxi back to the ship, had a shower and a 1 hour nana nap, or a Jimmy nap as I like to call them, which was really only about 20 minutes. So once we put the glad rags on and the bag of fruit jacket, we jumped in a taxi back to Broadway, which is from memory is about $20. And we decided to have dinner at another diner called Carnegie's.
Carnegie's is a typical American diner, conveniently located across from Carnegie Hall and near the Gershwin Theatre where we were seeing the production of Wicked. We had to wait 20 minutes for a table in this popular place. The decor was comfortable and the dishes were generous portions. It had a bustling energy and the service was friendly. I had the New York strip and was very happy with my choice. We made our way to the Gershwin Theatre and took our seats. Now there's not a bad seat in this theatre. It is one of Broadway's largest theatres and holds nearly 2,000 seats. And there wasn't a spare seat in the house.
Now I've never been part of such an animated, boisterous crowd. They were clapping and cheering and having the times of their lives. As were we.
And the reason we chose a theatre production like Wicked is because the orchestra just brings another level. And Wicked has everything. It brings the magic of staging, the emotional punch, and a little bit of comedy in there as well.
Anyway, the show was at 7 o'clock. With a 15-minute intermission, we were out of there at 9:45. We decided to take another walk to Times Square and see what that's like under lights. The rain didn't dampen our spirits, and it was still crowded. But the rain made it a little bit uncomfortable, so we just made our way from one end of Times Square to the other end of Times Square and then got another taxi back to the ship. So that was the end of day one, 16 hours, and my bed awaited. In bed by 11:15 with the alarm set for 7 o'clock in the morning. With weary eyes, we woke up and were scheduled to meet friends of ours, Phil and Anne, at 8 o'clock. The captain had made an announcement that our departure would be delayed, so we contacted Phil and Anne and decided to meet up at 9 o'clock and have a little bit more of a rest. Now off we went again, and this time Anne picked out a lovely little diner
Called the Flame Diner.
Now this was in Hell's Kitchen, not in the main tourist area, but halfway between Central Park and Pier 90, where the ship would berth. It was a pretty good authentic experience. The service was good and the food was big, and it was very reasonably priced. So after refuel, we had about another 20-minute walk to Central Park and had a really good chat about whether we were going to get a pedal cart or a horse. Now we decided to get a horse. They mightn't move as fast, but it was certainly a luxurious and a memorable experience. Our horse's name was Dallas.
Dallas was a retired New York trotter. We boarded our carriage for our journey through Central Park, with Linda and Anne feeling like princesses, with their Prince Charmings in tow. It felt like stepping back in time. The old-fashioned transport ride through New York was postcard perfect, romantic, leisurely and full of charm. The sounds are a blend of nature and city, the rhythmic clip-clop of the hooves, some rustling of golden leaves if they start to fall at the end of summer. You roll past the tree-lined paths and the open lawns, beautiful bridges, and often see the Manhattan skyline peeking through the trees to bring you back from the 19th century into modern times. It definitely had that fairy tale feel. Our favourite stop was the Bethesda Terrace and Fountain. It's often called the heart of Central Park and has both a grand and intimate feel where architecture, art and nature all meet. It was designed in the 1860s and has beautiful stone carvings and comprises 2 levels, an upper terrace and a lower terrace. As you make your way down to the lower terrace, you immediately notice the tiled ceiling. Absolutely stunning. There was a street performer playing the guitar, and I was mesmerised by the magical acoustics and really found it hard to move on. But the Bethesda Fountain was calling. It appears in multiple movies over the years, and it also leads on to the lake, where there was a couple taking a romantic rowboat ride. The fountain was a great spot for some photos, and we enjoyed a couple of happy snaps with our princesses. We found it hard to leave this area, but our time was limited, so we quickly made our way back to the horse-drawn carriage. We again weaved our way through the park, taking in the sights, before arriving at the John Lennon Memorial, officially called Strawberry Fields. And this is another highly visited spot in the park. The memorial was dedicated on October 9th, 1985, and what would have been Lennon's 45th birthday. It was created as a tribute after the death of John Lennon in 1980, outside the Dakota Apartments, which Oko continued to live for 40 years after the event. The design centres on Imagine. It's a simple black and white design set into the pavement. There was a street musician playing Lennon songs, and Strawberry Fields has become a global symbol of peace, hope and remembrance. After just over an hour of clip-clop, we said goodbye to our trusty steed Dallas, gave him a few carrots for his efforts, and walked away with fond memories.
Anyway, after the horse ride, we decided to go our own ways. Phil and Anne wanted to see 9/11 and head up to Tower 1.
And we wanted to have a look at the American Museum of Natural History.
Featured in the movie Night in the Museum. It was huge.
Now, a good tip here is to buy your tickets online. We arrived and saw huge lines snaking around the building, and a kind lady said if you buy your tickets online by using the QR code, you can just walk straight in, which we did. And I think this saved us about 45 minutes of waiting. New York has so many museums to choose from, and a lot are located in the Upper West End called the Museum Mile. We eventually whittled it down to 2, either the Fick Museum or the American Museum of Natural History, which I'll continue to give you an overview of in this video. The admission tickets were $30 a head, and nearly all museums are about the same price. Many highlights in the American Museum of Natural History, including Dinosaur Hall, the Centre of Earth and Space, cultural halls, and I particularly enjoyed the crystals and gems. There are many notable museums of natural history in the world, but this one's scale is off the map. I believe there was 21 buildings, it had views over the park, and just seemed to go on and on and on, and we really just wandered and got lost, and saw what we saw. In the end, its iconic exhibits and architecture has made it one of the most popular museums in New York.
After 3 hours in the museum, Linda was just fanging for a coffee. And being away for 2.5 months there, she was hanging for an Australian coffee. So we tracked down an Australian cafe in New York called Bluestone and walked the 10 minutes there on the Upper West Side. We'd organised to catch up with Phil and Anne again at a pub near Rockefeller Center called Riley's. Riley's had 48 beers on taps, and it was a sports bar, and it was the real deal American experience. We settled in there for a while, run up a bit of a tab, and came out again and decided to go to Times Square again on dusk this time.
At dusk, the sun sets behind the tall Midtown buildings, and the sky fades from this golden orange to a deep blue. And the neon lights of Times Square grow brighter and sharper against this darkening backdrop. Whether you see the famous digital billboards as visual pollution or as a piece of art with pulsating colour and movement, it's all in the eye of the beholder. There's a hum of different languages, laughter and a constant rhythm of traffic horns and music spilling from buskers. Elmo, Spider-Man, Minnie Mouse, big gorillas all pose for photos, but beware, they've got their hand out for a tip as soon as they do. And the pleasant conditions bring all the characters out to play. It's a strange mix of chaos and crowds and noise, and it's overwhelming but unforgettable and exhilarating at the same time. To drop our adrenaline down a bit, we decided to take the walk back to Pier 90 where the ship was berthed, And along the way we picked up some donuts, went past a New York fire station, and made our way down to the Hudson River and to eat our donuts alongside the Intrepid aircraft carrier. And eating our donuts on the bank of the Hudson River was a nice way to finish our day.
Anyway, New York, New York. It's up there with the great cities of the world, or the Parises and the Londons and the Romes and the Sydneys. Maybe not as aesthetically, architecturally beautiful as others, but there's no place in the world like New York.
Finally exhausted but happy, we made our way back to the ship after 2 fabulous days, with memories that will last a lifetime.
Anyway, I hope you found this useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and possibly subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Hooroo!